Imagine this, right? The fate of, well, one of the most high-profile figures in Malaysia, possibly, hanging on a document that honestly felt like a rumor until quite recently. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much of the justice system actually happens out in the open? I've always felt that transparency, is just crucial for public trust, especially with legal stuff.
Hmm.
This whole case, it feels like peeling an onion. Layers of hidden documents, reviews, always something new about what seemed settled. Today, we're digging into the very latest, the federal court's decision, August 13th, 2025, on former Prime Minister Najib Razak's bid for home incarceration.
Exactly. And it's important to be clear, today's ruling isn't about Najib actually going home. Not directly, anyway. What he essentially got today is like a crucial ticket, a ticket to argue his case further down the line. The federal court basically said no to the public prosecutor's appeal, and that means Najib's claim, this whole idea of a supplementary order for home detention, well, now it gets a proper hearing in the high court.
So what do you think about that? A situation where potentially game-changing evidence pops up years after someone's convicted. Is that, a fair part of pursuing justice, making sure every angle's covered? Or does it maybe raise questions about finality in our legal system?
Definitely something to consider. Okay, right, let's unpack this a bit. To really get what today means, we need a quick rewind. You'll remember Najib Razak was convicted in the SRC International Berhad case. Huge deal. That financial scandal really shook things up. Initially, the sentence was 12 years in prison, plus that massive 210 million ringgit fine. The reaction back then was, well, significant. A lot of people saw it as a win for accountability.
A landmark moment.
But then, and this is where it starts getting really interesting, the Pardons Board stepped in. Acting on their own recommendation, they advised the king at the time, Sultan Abdullah, to reduce the sentence. So it got cut to 6 years prison and the fine dropped to 50 million ringgit. This reduction, that was all public, announced officially. Yeah, that part was clear, widely reported. For many, that seemed like the end of that chapter, albeit a revised one. But what's really thrown a spanner in the works is this thing called the supplementary order. And Najib's claim is that, alongside the public pardon reduction, the 16th king, Sultan Abdullah, issued another separate order. An order that supposedly allows him to serve the rest of his sentence under house arrest, not in Kajang prison. Now, this claim, initially it hit a wall. The High Court rejected his request for a judicial review.
Why was that?
Well, basically, they called it hearsay. He couldn't actually produce the document back then. The judge basically said, look, there's no paper, no signature, nothing solid, just talk. So, dismissed.
But then things changed. Quite dramatically, actually. Just when it looked like that claim was, dead in the water. New stuff came out. First, Najib's son filed a sworn affidavit, a formal legal statement saying the former king himself confirmed this supplementary order existed. And maybe even more importantly, his lawyers presented a letter, apparently from the Pahang Palace, a letter confirming that, yes, Sultan Abdullah did issue such an addendum during his time as king.
Right, and that obviously put the courts in a new position. What do you do with this kind of evidence? So the appeals court looked at it again. They overturned the High Court's rejection. It was a split decision, mind you, 2-1. But the majority felt this new evidence, the affidavit, the palace letter, meant it wasn't just hearsay anymore. It deserved a proper hearing. Of course, the Attorney General's chambers weren't happy with that. They appealed that decision to the federal court.
Okay, so the AG's office pushed back.
They did. They argued, allowing this could set a tricky precedent. And that brings us right up to today, August 13th. The federal court, 3 judges, looked at the AG's appeal, and they unanimously dismissed it. Unanimous, that's quite a strong signal. So the appeals court decision stands. The case goes back to the High Court for that full, substantive review. And interestingly, it'll be heard by a new judge, Justice Liu Yuqing. Case management set for August 18th.
Okay, so let's break down what Najib actually won't today. It's not freedom, clearly, but it feels significant. What's the first big takeaway?
Well, first, he's won the chance to actually argue the point. The chance for this evidence, this supposed supplementary order, to be properly examined in court. Without today's win, that door was closed. The legality of home arrest for him couldn't even be formally discussed.
Right, so step 1 is getting it formally on the table. Makes sense. And second, you mentioned the perception earlier.
Yeah, I think the second point is perhaps more about perception and legitimacy. By allowing the case to go forward, the federal court, the highest court, is implicitly saying this supplementary order isn't just smoke and mirrors. It's something serious enough to warrant judicial scrutiny. It's moved from hearsay to subjective inquiry. That's a big shift.
And thirdly, politically. This must give his supporters quite a boost.
Oh, absolutely. Politically, this is significant leverage, especially for UMNO. You saw the reactions outside court, the UMNO Pantai Valley Women's Wing Secretary, Suzalina, in tears of joy. His sons, Nizar and Nasifuddin, calling it the result they hoped for, saying justice will prevail. His daughter Noriana's comment, "We live to fight another day," it feeds their narrative. They can now point to the federal court and say, see, even the top court agrees this needs a proper look. It reframes their argument significantly.
Okay, so a procedural win, a perception shift, and political ammunition. But what about the actual path ahead? Is home arrest now likely?
Well, that's the crucial next part. Despite today's win, the road to actually getting home incarceration, it's still very long and legally very complicated. The federal court was careful to state, their decision today does not mean the supplementary order is automatically valid or enforceable. It doesn't mean it's automatically part of the main pardon deal either. The high court still has the main job, determining if this order is actually valid, if it holds legal water, and if it's constitutionally sound. That's the big hurdle.
So even if the high court says, yes, this document looks real, the government could still fight it.
Potentially, yes. Even if the high court validates the order itself, challenges could come. Questions like, did this kind of order go beyond the powers of the Pardons Board, or even the monarch acting on the board's advice? That's the concept of ultra vires acting beyond one's legal authority. That's likely where the next legal battleground would be.
And the Constitution itself plays a big role here, right? Article 42.
Absolutely critical. Article 42 of the federal constitution is key. It says the king acts on the advice of the Pardons Board when granting pardons and must attend its meetings. So, a huge question for the high court will be, was this alleged supplementary order discussed and advised upon during a proper Pardons Board meeting following that constitutional procedure, or was it something separate? This dives deep into the process, the intent, and the fundamental legitimacy of the order within our constitutional monarchy framework. It's not just about a piece of paper, it's about the process.
Wow. Okay. So this really does go way beyond just Najib's situation.
Yeah.
It touches on fundamental questions about, well, the limits of royal pardon power, how our Constitution works in practice. And you can already see the political lines being drawn, can't you? Supporters, like we said, see it as vindication, a step towards righting a perceived wrong, justice finally prevailing, in their view.
Yes. For them, it's proof the system allows for correction, that their leader is pursuing a legitimate path.
But on the flip side, those who oppose Najib, they're likely worried, right?
Definitely. They raise concerns about fairness. Is this creating a sort of special pathway for someone powerful? Does it risk undermining public trust in the idea that the law applies equally to everyone? These are valid concerns being voiced.
It really puts the spotlight back on our institutions and public confidence in them.
Exactly. At the end of the day, this isn't just about one document. It's a high-stakes legal and political drama. It's testing the procedures, the transparency, the very integrity of our highest offices, the judiciary, the executive, the monarchy's constitutional role. It forces us all to think about how our rule of law operates, how much is clear and upfront, how much might depend on, well, interpretations of additional conditions or directives that weren't initially public. The real deep dive here is understanding how such an order could exist within our system and the precedent it sets. That's the core constitutional question.
So, summing up today, Najib didn't get home detention, but he secured that crucial ticket, the right to have his claim about the supplementary order fully argued in the high court. All eyes now turn there to see how Judge Liu Yeking handles the examination of this controversial document.
That's right. And as it plays out, the ripples will be felt widely. It's about more than one man's liberty. It could potentially reshape understandings of executive power, royal prerogative, and the whole process of justice in Malaysia. It impacts how everyone perceives the fairness of the system.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this as we continue to unpack the most significant developments in Malaysia.